Hare Krishna and welcome. Vanchakalpatiruvishcha Kripasinduvevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnevyo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarane. In any formal talk, we want to set the energies to invoke the sacred nature of our conversations. So therefore, we always begin by invoking the blessings of the acharyas and of our obeisances to the Supreme Lord Krishna. And in that way, we have some gravity. We bring some gravity to the field of conversation. And hopefully that will continue. There's also levity involved. Now, I know that we had put forward a request for people to write to us their favorite movies, and only the host and I listed the movies. But I wanted to speak to the issue of movies because movies are really a time when we, if the movie's good, we suspend our disbelief. In other words, we actually get involved emotionally in the drama. We believe we're part of the drama. We're projecting ourselves into the drama. And in that way, we have many experiences. We fearful, we become enthusiastic, we cheer. So many different emotions are evoked in a film. And film is a perfect analogy to actually what is happening ontologically to each of us. That we believe that we're these bodies, that we're these minds, and that we are doing something and experiencing something in this movie that's being projected called life. When in fact, we have nothing to do with it. And that's why Maya is so difficult to overcome, because just like a movie, a good movie that you are completely absorbed, you become completely absorbed in it. We're completely absorbed in this nature of Maya, and it's difficult to overcome. But fortunately, there is the mercy of the Lord, and that mercy comes in the form of pure devotees who come like in the Matrix, when you have just a small coterie of people who understand that there's an illusion that everyone's living in, and they're the ones that are living outside of that illusion. So similarly, a acharya, pure devotee, comes from time to time to awaken the conditioned souls into the real reality of their situation. It's almost as if you were in a theater and someone, you were completely absorbed in the emotion of the loss or the gain of something, and then someone puts their hand on your shoulder and says, "We have to leave, there's a fire." And all of a sudden you're shocked back into reality. So similarly, we have that similar experience when a pure devotee comes, and through his potency, Jiv Jago, he wakes us up out of our disbelief, and rather out of our belief. He actually helps us disbelieve in the current reality. And in that way, we are opening our minds to the transcendent reality. Now, Srila Prabhupada came, of course, he is our Pied Piper who came to bring us to that position, wake us up, but he can't move our feet for us. I mean, it's our choice to get up and follow that Pied Piper out of town. I remember when I was in the temple, my mother was writing letters to Srila Prabhupada, exhorting him to tell me to go home. And Srila Prabhupada wrote to her very compassionately, and he said, "I can't do that." He said, "Because your son, as an adult, he has free will. I can't make him leave." And it was, kind of a dose of reality for my mother. It was very true. I was not a child, and I was fully able to make my own decisions. So it is the position of the spiritual master to awaken us, and it is our choice what we do with it. So Srila Prabhupada comes, and what does he do? What does he do? He, of course, he brings Harinam. That's the first thing he lands with. But along with Harinam, there's a host of other transcendental instruments in the names of various literatures. And the first one that he bestowed upon us, other than the small books like Easy Journey to Other Planets, which was first, he gave us the Bhagavad Gita. And that Bhagavad Gita is considered the primer of spiritual life. You know, it establishes that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he began to translate the Srimad Bhagavatam, the cream of Vedic literatures. And he introduced us to this extremely mystical figure by the name of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, all of which was not tactile for us. We were in America, and all of those places of pastime were in India. So if you were to have any kind of a experience of the five senses, you would have to go to India, you'd have to go to the places where there's footprints in the stone, or there's a well where things happened, or there's the chapels of the Lord in a temple. But most of us, we didn't, in the beginning, we didn't have that facility. So we were just basing our faith on Shabda, on sound. It was that powerful that sound vibration alone, through the chanting and through the hearing, even as simple as it was enough to start an avalanche called the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, or better known as the Hare Krishna movement, because it's expanded even beyond ISKCON. So along with all of that, and you're all aware of these various literatures, there was a postgraduate literature that had been untranslated and commented upon called the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita is very unique because it is the pastimes of a much more recent, historically recent figure, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, also known as Nimai, who was actually a person born 500 years ago, and as you know, in Navadvip, and then preached Krishna consciousness for some years before he ended up in Puri, absorbing himself in internal pastimes. And without going into detail about the purposes of Lord Chaitanya's appearance, divine appearance, other than to spread the Sankirtan movement, I'd kind of like to just remind you that this great literature, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, is sitting on a shelf available to you, or it can be ordered, or you can read it online. And it is really divided into three sections. The first section is the Anchalila. And the Anchalila basically establishes Lord Chaitanya's position. And this is all put together by a saintly person whose name is Krishnadas Kaviraj, who came to Vrindavan because Lord Nrsimhananda appeared to him in a dream and ordered him to go there. He had great service for him in Vrindavan. Now, that sounds not that odd. When you add into the mix that Krishnadas Kaviraj was in his late 80s, almost 90, when he got this instruction, it becomes a little more interesting, because he himself didn't know what that service was going to be, but he understood that his instruction was to go to the land of Braj. At the same time, there had been some histories of Lord Chaitanya written, because this was after Sri Chaitanya had left the planet. And those histories were written down, were actually memorized first by Raghunath Das, and then transcribed in a book called the Chaitanya Bhagavat by Vrindavan Das. But he only, it got so voluminous that he only really got through the early pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and wasn't able to expand on the later pastimes. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Puri, he'd done 6 years of traveling all over India preaching. Then he settled into his later pastimes in Puri. And all of this history was then written down by Krishnadas Kaviraj into what we call the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which really was not available to us until Srila Prabhupada translated and commented on this amazing work. This is the postgraduate study. You know, it's one thing to understand Krishna is God. It's another thing to actually develop one's love of God through the various stages up and through Raganuga Bhakti, where one is spontaneously just in complete surrender and service to the Supreme Lord. This is a very high stage of transcendental life, and in many ways, it requires a lot of hearing. If we understand how King Parikshit had made progress, it was through 7 days and nights of hearing from Sukadeva Goswami. This sound vibration has such an effect that it actually elevates your consciousness just by itself, just by hearing. So if you haven't absorbed yourself in this Chaitanya Charitamrita, now's your chance, because it's not available in every lifetime. And it's come to our attention somehow or another by the mercy of the Lord. I'm going to share with you 4 or 5 verses. They're sung very nicely by one devotee. I'm going to share screen here. Can you give me sharing rights? And this devotee recites very beautifully some of the verses in Anchalila, some of the early verses, and we're going to look at these verses and discuss them briefly, because Anchalila has to basically establish that none of the expansions of Krishna are the original Godhead. There's many who believe that Narayan, and the Garbhodakshay and the Kshirodakshay, the Garbhodakshay, Mahavishnu, that these are God. But there's a differentiation between the expansions of God and from whom that expansion came. So just like in English, there's a difference between the subject, and then there's the part of the subject, the description of the subject, what it does or what it looks like. So the subject is Krishna, and these expansions are manifestations of that subject, what Krishna expands as. Do I have sharing rights now? Yes, okay. So now I'm going to share this screen here. I'll try to. Oh, here it is. I'm screen sharing, it says. Do you see a screen up there?
Yep, I see it very well, yeah.
You do, okay. I don't know why I don't. Do you see a lot of windows or just one?
I see main window, and I see a couple of the one that open on the side. But I see the main with translation and text 47, Krishna Kahina, Rahmat and Mahar.
You see, when I check on it, I don't see it here. That is weird. Never had that happen before.
Maybe you should double click.
So I guess that's not going to work.
Can you double click on the screen?
Yeah, I'm double clicking there, and it goes.
It doesn't change. Okay,
goes
then
back.
go here on the top, right, on the right of the screen. And you
Uh-huh.
can see there's like this
No.
little, when you see view, you see the words view? Top right corner, view, it says view.
Not on mine.
How about that? I see you and I see what you're showing on the screen.
I see. Okay, there we go. Can you
Okay.
see that?
Yes, I see perfectly.
So here we go.
Krishna said, Brahma, I cannot understand what you are saying. Lord Narayana is he who sits in the hearts of all living beings and lies down in the waters of the Karana ocean. Brahma kahe jale jeeve yehi Narayana. Se saba tomara amsha ye satya vachana. Brahma replied, what I have said is true. The same Lord Narayana who lives on the waters and in the hearts of all living beings is but a plenary portion of you. Karanapti garbhodaka kshirodaka shayi Mayadvare srushti kare tate sabha mayi. The Karanodaka Shayi, Garbhodaka Shayi, and Kshirodaka Shayi forms of Narayana all create in cooperation with the material energy. In this way, they are attached to Maya. Setina Jala Shayi Sarva Antaryami. Brahmanda Brahmdera Atma Ye Purusha Nami. These three Vishnus lying in the water are the super soul of everything. The super soul of all the universes is known as the first Purusha. Hiranya Garbhera Atma Garbhodaka Shayi. Yashti Jiva Antaryami Kshirodaka Shayi. Garbhodaka Shayi Vishnu is the super soul of the aggregate of living entities. And Kshirodaka Shayi Vishnu is the super soul of each individual living being. Ye sabara darshani te ache maya ganda. Turiya Krishnera nahi mayara sambandha. Superficially, we see that these Purushas have a relationship with Maya. But above them, in the fourth dimension, is Lord Krishna, who has no contact with the material energy.
So, are we back? Yeah.
Yes.
So this is part of the establishment when Lord Brahma is questioning whether or not Narayan is supreme. This is the response given to convince him that actually Krishna is beyond even the expansions of Narayan. In your preaching, you're going to meet people, many, especially many Indians, who will speak on the issue of Narayan. Of course, Narayan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead to them. But the gift that Srila Prabhupada brought to us was that Krishna is the supreme origin, the Adi Purusha, the original progenitor and that everything is emanating from Krishna. The Chaitanya Charitamrita in the first Antya-lila, in the first of 3 sections, established this beyond any doubt, and carries forth many of the, matches many of the arguments made that there are other so-called gods that are equal to Krishna. But that's not what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Srila Prabhupada appeared to, for the purpose of broadcasting to us. They've given us the most secret of all secrets, even though it's there in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, this is the secret of all secrets. It's not emphasized to the degree where a person who reads that Gita, if they're at all, have all Mayavad tendencies, they can easily still be led astray. Their minds can confuse themselves. And therefore, we study the Srimad Bhagavatam. We hear, I wouldn't say study, but we hear, and we hear from the Chaitanya Charitamrita these postgraduate understandings of Krishna so that we ourselves can convince others from wherever they're coming from. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody can be convinced, obviously. And it's not that we agitate others who are fixed in their religions or their spiritual beliefs. We just want to be encouraging to everyone. But I'm sure many of you have experienced that someone, sometime, will question whether or not Shiva is God, or Brahma is God, or Narayan is God. And unless we have the knowledge ourselves, we cannot convince them or even begin to convince them that actually Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And that's really the responsibility that we've been given in this Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. We're not just trying to get people to know about God or love God as an in-person. We've been given the gift of knowing who is God. And that's really unique. And therefore that carries with it a certain weight. That means one should study, one should hear, one should absorb oneself so that one can eventually repeat and help others understand what it is that has been given as a gift to us. And I think if I'm able to inspire you to especially begin to study and read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which can be challenging because it skips around like the Bhagavatam does. But because Krishna's Kaviraj has presented it in a rather organized fashion, it makes it a lot easier. There's also numerous courses online from devotees on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and there's numerous workbooks and handbooks that have been created on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which makes it much easier than it was for us in the early 1970s when it was first published. You can't imagine, it was published in 2 months. All volumes were published in 2 months, I think 19 volumes. And, who could wrap their head around all of that information quickly? And you were skipping around and reading here and reading there. It was very difficult. It required a certain kind of intelligence, one that I certainly didn't have. And, a person would have to be very scholarly to absorb themselves deeply in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. But eventually, you gain a taste, and it's a ruchi that develops. You want to hear more. You want to go deeper. You want it to become ingrained in your consciousness so that you can then reflect it to others. And I say it as that because we tend to get to a plateau in Krishna consciousness. We think, okay, I'm Krishna conscious, I'm chanting, I'm on the path, I'm a devotee, even I'm getting initiated, and we want to coast. It's just a part of being human to be somewhat lazy, but you won't get the full taste of the nectar unless you dive in and really become conversant with all of the literatures that Srila Prabhupada has left us. And he was very concerned that his disciples even distributed his books, but didn't read them. So I'm offering you the opening to Chaitanya Charitamrita as a historical journey, not just a philosophical journey, one that I took in 1980 when I went to Jagannath Puri for the first time, did a documentary there called Chaitanya's Puri, and was really flabbergasted when I began to go to the places that were described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Gambhira and the Paramananda Puri's well, and all the other, certainly the Jagannath Mandir, which I couldn't go into, but all the other places, they became very real to me at that time. And I'm the kind of person that kind of needs that tactile experience. Others, they can experience it more on a mental plane. So you have to see for yourself, but it's all available through hearing, and reading is hearing the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is really the purpose of my talk today, to get you to pick it up and start reading it. So with that, I will see if there's anybody out there, if there's any questions, I'm happy to
Yes,
answer.
I have a question regarding the passage that we were just looking at, regarding that Narayana, Vishnu there are three Vishnu, and one Vishnu is like kind of responsible for jivas, right? That's where they're coming from Vishnu, one of the Vishnus. And then Krishna being, that's what, like, I'm trying to put I know logically I would never be able to understand that. I completely.
No, you can, but
I'm trying to get at least like some kind of glimpse.
have you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita?
No, not yet. I'm in the process.
This is only the second chapter. And I picked out these verses to kind of illustrate that the first section of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is establishing Krishna. Because just like you just admitted, what do you mean that Krishna? Krishna is you see, Krishna expands as the Kshirodakshay Vishnu, from the Garbhodakshay Vishnu, from the Karuna-dakshay Vishnu. But you don't know what that means exactly. How does that play out? Where is that, where does that land in terms of how I worship God and how I relate to God? And that's
How
the
to
beauty.
see Krishna in all of it, particularly.
Yeah, and you'll know that it says that Krishna was above.
Exactly. How he is related to all of this happening.
Yeah. So if I whet your appetite for how he is related, I've accomplished my goal. Because this is the postgraduate study.
Okay.
The Chaitanya Charitamrita is more advanced than the Srimad Bhagavatam, actually.
Okay, so that will be the homework. First and second chapters.
Very good. Very good.
Okay, I can do that.
And like I say, there's wonderful introductions to the Chaitanya Charitamrita on YouTube. One can find. So it gives, it takes repetition to actually get your wrap your mind around it. Prabhupada, he dropped translating the Bhagavatam to translate and comment on the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how. And then he went back to the Bhagavatam. So at some point in the early 70s, he realized, I don't know how long I'm going to live. I better get this Chaitanya Charitamrita out there. And then he made the press, his Bhaktivedanta book press. He wanted it all put together with illustrations. None were done. No paintings were done in 60 days. He wanted it done and printed. 60 days. Rameshwar was in charge of the BBT at that time, says, no way we can do that, Prabhupada. Not possible. And it was done in 60 days.
Wow.
It's a
About,
great.
about divine.
So yeah, so I hope that I whet your appetite.
Yes, you definitely did.
And the teachings of Lord Chaitanya is a kind of a very thin summary of some of the aspects of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but it really doesn't do justice to the whole thing. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
So that's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's an invocation when one reads the CC. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chanja Jaya Gora Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chanja Jaya Gora Bhaktavinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chanja Jaya Gora Bhaktavinda. Then you read. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. That will be fantastic.